What is a burnout? Well, a burnout, also known as a peel out or power brake, is the practice of keeping a vehicle stationary and spinning its wheels, causing the tyres to heat up and smoke due to friction. It's also my all-time favourite driving series. Yes, my favourite. So sorry Daytona, Wipeout and Mario Kart, you are all good, but Burnout good? No. The Burnout franchise, which started its life on the 6th generation of consoles, is the home console arcade racer to end all arcade racers. Never have I spent more time with each rendition of a driving franchise than with the Burnout franchise. It's one of those game series that's so good, when people ask, what's your favourite game? You say Burnout, then Burnout 2, then Burnout 3, then Burnout Paradise. Well, actually, that's a touchy subject. I personally sit in the Paradise car park myself, but both are good. Anyway, more on that in a minute. Recently on Twitter, when uploading a picture of several games in the Burnout series teasing the idea of a Burnout Complete History video, the response was surprisingly overwhelming. I had no idea that people love this game that much. Yep, it seems that all you guys love a bit of Burnout too. So put down your split seconds, your blurs and your hot pursuits, and join me as I take you down to Paradise City to look at Burnout's origins, its development, its inspiration, and of course, its games. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. Yeah, that's enough. I don't want to get flagged after all. Now, the Burnout franchise has always been a big part of my life, merging together more serious and, in my opinion, more boring racing games with the more frantic, exciting arcade-style racer, and in the end, giving you a game series like no other. Well, actually that's not 100% true. You see, before Burnout, everyone just seemed to be copying games like this. And after Burnout, games started copying that. So, there's plenty of Burnout clones. But you know what? That's fine by me. Because when this happens, it actually spawns some pretty solid games that actually tried to rival the inspiration. That was before they get knocked down a peg or two when the next game in the Burnout series is released. Then, the ultimate, the definitive and the most played games in the series came out, and no game since has ever been able to touch them. But hold up. Before looking at those games, I think we're in fact getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, let's go back to the beginning. Alex Ward and Fiona Perry. These are the main guys behind this series. Alex was an aggravated youngster looking for a job in video games after getting a degree in psychology, who moved around from being a playtester to eventually, as he puts it, being the T-boy at Acclaim, and then eventually travelling around Europe and Asia checking up on development of Acclaim games. He eventually left that life behind and worked at Criterion Software as a developer. Fiona, on the other hand, was a young girl who grew up in Dubai before moving to England and being the only girl in an all-boys school, and quickly becoming very interested in video games and computer software. After studying history at university and joining a book publisher, she eventually rose her way up to the head of the company's electronic publishing division, and before moving job again in 1997, where she became a video game producer for Criterion Software in 1997. This is where the two met, and this is where Criterion Software, probably most well known at the time for being the engine behind those fantastic 3D Grand Theft Auto games from the PS2 era, created a small division of about 10 people and called it Criterion Games. And you guessed it, Fiona and Alex were leading the way. All that's left now is to make some games. Nope, Not yet. Trickstyle was what Fiona was working on as a producer, with a special thanks going to Alex Ward. Now, Criterion had already pumped out a few driving type games beforehand, such as Speedboat Attack, Radline Racer and Suzuki All-Star Extreme Racing. But now it was the time to try something new, something that would have a broad appeal for all gamers and a game that anyone would be able to pick up and try as soon as they saw it. Let me ask a question. How do you drive a car when you rent one? This was the original pitch put forward by Fiona, and for anyone that's played the games, you know they achieved it. You see, with games like Ridge Racer and Gran Turismo completely dominating the video game racing scene, the idea of a new one entering the market wasn't exactly ideal. In fact, they was advised against it, which is why they decided to merge the two, sort of realistic looking and driving, mixed with sort of arcade high adrenaline drifty action. The result is obviously Driving Hero, the working title for Burnout. I can only assume that, like many people watching this, the last time you may have played this original game was before you got hold of this. Well, I'm here to tell you to stop. If you actually go back and try out the earlier games, and this goes for all the games up to Paradise, there is still a crazy amount of fun to have with them all. Well, okay, maybe not all of them, but we'll get to that in a minute. Plus, on top of this, the games are actually dirt cheap, so do yourself a favour and go and get them all. The idea of the game is pretty simple. Go as fast as you can and don't crash. It's easily the hardest game in the whole series, perhaps that's due to the harder, clunkier controls, and I won't lie, going back after playing the later games was a bit of a struggle at first, but in the end, nostalgia won me over, and the end result is brilliant. The game's unique, not licensed soundtrack really does lend itself quite well to the first game, which, at the time, I even ripped and burnt onto CD and listened to whilst I drove actual cars. Which, thinking about it, no doubt resulted in many car crashes. And although the crashes in the game are not as exaggerated as later games, the on the edge of your seat and fast, almost pressed up against the screen, quick reaction type gameplay is most definitely here. You will not regret your time with this game. Plus, it is quite nice to see the origins of such a legendary series, with over 300 vehicles apparently being present on any of the game's tracks at one time, 14 courses, and the option to play a championship mode, dual mode, single race, time attack and personal favourite survival mode, which punishes you with even one slight crash, and obviously let's not forget the 2-player mode. All of this tied up in an awesome nostalgia-packed game that really does deserve to be in your collection, and critics thought so too. I personally had not been this obsessed with a driving game since Wipeout 2097, and at every possible chance I could, I told all of my friends to go and get it, which thankfully resulted in my personal GameCube version, and when I visited friends I was able to play the PlayStation 2 and Xbox versions too. I even went as far as randomly giving people advice inside game stores. I should have been on bloody commission from Criterion. Now, if you are a retro collector and can't decide which version to get, good friend of the show Zoe Kirk Robinson, link in the description, showed me some significant differences that beforehand I hadn't noticed. Like, for instance, how in the PlayStation version, with its smooth as buttercade-like driving style, actually has the easiest opponents. If you like Mario Kart style games, then this is the one for you, as you can easily gain first place and just as easily lose it too. Then you have the GameCube version, in our opinions the best version. Slightly heavier controls giving you a chance to oversteer quite easily, plus having significantly more cars on the road. And without a doubt, definitely harder opponents. For those that are up for a challenge, this is the version to get. But if you still can't decide, well, go and get the Xbox version, which sort of takes elements from both games. It obviously has the nicest graphics, but it almost has the GameCube difficulty, only this time set in the PlayStation 2 world. However, strangely enough, this one actually feels like it has the least amount of cars. These differences, however, are only really noticeable if you play all 3 games back to back. And other than hardcore collectors like Zoe and myself, it really doesn't matter. As you may have guessed, Burnout big fan I am. And thankfully, I did not need to wait too long for the sequel. How was they gonna top such a great game? Member berries alert. You know a game is good when you get that overwhelming feel of nostalgia just by hearing the title screen. Burnout 2 Point of Impact really did take what made that original game so good and, well, made it look sort of bad. This is a common theme that will happen over and over again throughout this video. So let's leave that crappy tech demo behind and look at the awesome sequel. Only joking, it's still a great game. Getting yet again almost perfect scores across the board from all major sites as well as fans. Now with 32 stages spread across 6 locations, you get the chance to customise and race 21 different cars. The core game is still here, building up boost by driving recklessly, constantly bringing your ass closer to the edge of your seat before you inevitably crash. And whilst on that note, let's talk about the mode that obviously blew everyone away. The crash mode. You can win a gold medal by simply crashing your car and causing as much damage as possible. The more cars, buses and lorries that you collide with, the more damage you cause. And in the end results you in getting a nice shiny medal. This is more of a single player game mode, but it's a really nice addition. However, for me, the most fun to be had is by playing local multiplayer races in chase mode where you literally smash naughty drivers off the road in a short amount of distance, or vice versa. A game mode that on top of all those brilliant obvious modes like time attack, single race and career, really did devour an insane amount of my time. However, not quite as much as the game's sequel. If you like either these first 2 games, then this third game in the series, Burnout 3 Takedown, is most definitely worth a purchase. Actually, scrub that. No matter what sort of game you're into, Burnout 3 Takedown is an absolute must-own game. It's the closest thing to a perfect game that you're likely to own, and deserves to be put right up there alongside some of the greatest games of all time. Again, I think Paradise slightly gets the edge, but there is still no denying that this game is an absolute highlight for the series, and gaming in general. Sure, you got your usual gameplay modes that made the first couple of games stand out amongst the competition, but this time it's yet again refined for the better. Notice the game title being called Takedown? Well, they've included those great chase elements from the second game and completely revamped them. Now, not only do you need to drive dangerously, like all the time, but instead you also need to smash into as many opponents as possible, like all the time. The problem when doing this, however, is that you're obviously driving crazy fast, and pretty much all of the time you end up putting yourself at risk for the chance to basically just get some extra boost. The gameplay never ever stops in Burnout 3, even when you get taken down yourself, as the game has added this sort of new bullet time mode, which actually, God knows how, lets you steer your wreckage ever so slowly for a few seconds into other cars in an attempt to do some after-touch takedowning, which rewards you with some boost for you to respawn to gain back the few spaces that you've probably lost. Remember that crush mode from Burnout 2? Well, it's back, and it's better than ever. This time, not only do you have a few money boosters to collect on the way, but depending on the damage that you cause, you can actually unlock the Crash Breaker, which lets you suicide bomb your vehicle and steer it in another direction. All in all, with the new Takedown gameplay and the classic elements of speed that the series has been known for up to this point, what you are left with is, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but a perfect game. Literally 10 out of 10 gold star seal of quality goodness, 100% perfect. Not just one of Xbox's or PlayStation's best games, but one of the greatest driving games ever made. The only problem is, where do you go from here? How do you top literally perfection? Well, a year later, Burnout Revenge and Burnout Legends came out on the exact same day. This is the point in the series where it started to feel sort of more of the same. The jump between Takedown and Revenge isn't as big, but there are a few obvious changes that slightly change up the gameplay. Most notably this time you have checking traffic. This is a bit hit and miss for me, even though it's obviously a lot of fun to actually smash into the back of random cars, making them fly ridiculously around you, and sometimes actually causing crashes that would have been impossible before. The effect does start to tire a little bit for me. And personally, I was more of a fan of the on the edge of your seat dodging of traffic at 200 miles an hour. But honestly, this is just a varied opinion. Traffic checking is still great fun, and a lot of fans swear by the new gameplay. Either way, it's still 100% worth checking out. The new tracks on offer actually rival some of Burnout 3's tracks, and the whole game does feel slightly more polished than before. Is it better than 3? No. But not by a long shot. It sort of feels like DLC for Revenge, slightly pushed a little bit further to make it its own game. And for me, that's nothing but a good thing, especially considering it eventually became available for the 360, where it obviously gained even more spit and polish. Then you have Burnout Legends, the first time the series made its way to the PSP, and yet again it's probably one of the best games for that system too. Taking most of its inspiration from the fantastic Burnout 3, what you got is obviously a slightly graphically dropped version that feels a little bit more greatest hitsy. But most importantly, and crazily enough, the amazing gameplay does not feel stripped down. However, in the DS version, it definitely does. This, as I'm sure you can all see, is easily the worst game in the entire franchise. Next up, in 2007, another spin-off for the series was released on the PlayStation 2 and PSP, again on the same day. By this point, we've played Burnout 3 several times over, with only a few slight changes here and there, and this game is no different. Yet again, it got great reviews, but was held back due to one slight change. No crash mode. It's a shame to see it go, but what you're left with is an utterly fantastic, mostly single player experience with the excellent Maniac mode, which takes away the carnage in favour of some white knuckle racing in and out between cars, trying to be as dangerous as possible. Sort of like the very first game, but in the new improved engine. This version alone makes this game an absolute must buy for me. But all of these mini inclusions just go to show how extremely good Burnout 3 was. However, none of them are really lacking the big leap forward that the series is well known for up to that point. But lurking in the shadows at Criterion, the crew was in fact working on a sequel that would push the series once again, just like they did with the original trilogy. Evolve or die for Paradise. We knew we had to change everything. Burnout was a killer arcade driving game, but for a new generation of hardware and connected player, Burnout had to become something more ambitious. This was what they set out to achieve, and for me at least, they did it. Burnout Paradise is one of the greatest games ever made. It's literally in my top 5. A sort of open world take on a fantastic formula with gorgeous graphics, a brilliant online community, and well, it's Burnout yet again, but this time taken to the next level. Everything you love about the games up to this point is here, but this time injected with so much more, especially if you get all the DLC packs, all of which are available in the Ultimate Box, thankfully this time finally available for the PC. So, what makes this game so good? Well, for me, it's the same thing that knocks this game down a peg or two in favour of the third game for many gamers out there. It's open world. In Burnout Paradise, for the first time, it is your choice how you handle races. At every single junction of traffic lights, you are given an optional challenge based on what you've seen already in previous games. Maybe you want to do a typical race, a burning route to unlock cars, marked man where you get chased, road rage, or perhaps stunt run where you need to pull off as many tricks as possible in a short amount of time. But how you get to that finish line or complete a challenge is completely up to you. Sometimes you can find shortcuts, but taking these can be risky, making the game quite a bit harder than previous versions, which in my opinion makes it so much better. But on top of this, you can actually automatically aim for the best time on every road against your friends. You also have a crazy collectathon type thing going on as you try your best to take out billboards or knock over gates. Practically every single game mode is available online for up to 8 players, and you even have free burn challenges involving you to work together to complete 350 original challenges. There is just so much injected into this game that completing it to 100% is not only an incredibly big challenge, but so addicting that you really are going to want to do it, whether you're a trophy hunter or not. The extra DLC brings motorbikes to the game for the first time, a party mode which sadly doesn't make up for the lack of split screen multiplayer found in the game, but it is still great fun if you have enough Burnout fans around your house. And possibly best of all is Big Surf Island, which is actually relatively small compared to the huge open world feel of Paradise City, but it is a great place to literally go nuts in the most insane stunts available in the series up to this point, period. Plus you can do it all whilst driving the Ecto 1, or Kit, or General Lee, or best of all, the DeLorean. And yes, it does fly, and yes, flames do come out of the tyres when you burn out. There really is so much to do here, and although some of you may say that I'm wrong in saying that this is the best in the series, I've got no regrets. There's an obvious reason why it's one of mine and many others' favourite game in the series, and if you have never tried it, I warn you, once you start, you are not going to want to stop. And there you go guys, the entire Burnout franchise, the complete history, 5 incredibly good games, several spin-offs which are also mostly good, and just one more very different spin-off called Burnout Crash, which again is also great fun, although obviously completely different. It may look like a gimmicky little game, but it's actually quite a lot of fun. It's not only addictive as hell, it's actually quite challenging and takes a lot more skill than you would expect. Taking a more top-down earlier Grand Theft Auto look, in this game you're challenged with causing as much damage as possible using the techniques that you've mastered in the main series. So, where do we go from here? Well, one of the hardest pills to swallow when creating these complete history videos is that they eventually, at some point, can no longer be called complete history videos. It only takes one more game and one more announcement to make them dated. However, in Burnout's case, I feel we really have hit this franchise's peak. The majority of the team have left Criterion now after several members of the team worked on Need for Speed Most Wanted and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, which might I add are 2 very good games with kick-ass soundtracks and actual licensed cars. But there's just one problem. They're not Burnout good. And it pains me to say it because just like many fans out there, all we want is another Burnout game. So what actually did happen to the team that worked on this solid series? Well, the overall majority left Criterion under EA's name and have thankfully managed to give us a golf game. Haha, yeah, right. This is Freefield's Entertainment's take on a crash mode style game where you control a golf ball. As weird as it sounds, it's actually quite a lot of fun. But again, it's not Burnout. Take this as good news or not, but in 2016, EA, who own the Burnout name, did state that there are no new Burnout games in development. And that's why I'm happy to call this the complete history of the Burnout franchise. And all we can do now is just hope that one day the team at Freefield's Entertainment give the world the spiritual successor to the arcade racing game that all gamers that have played it are wanting. Hey there guys, it's the part of the video where I say thanks to everyone for watching, including my patrons, with a special shout out going to Ted Kimmel, Ryan Burford, Ian A. Chapman, Phil Lowlins, James Loveridge, Team Not Crash, Casey Garner, Blitz Hedgie, Ben Hall, Taylor Ullman and Tiago Piera dos Santos Silva. If you want to check out my Patreon and get added to this list as well as seeing episodes like this early, then be sure to click the link that you see on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to check out any more complete history or random history videos, then those links are there too. But for now, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.